The Gilded Ring was not a place for good people. Everyone knew that. It was a space station that floated in the darkness between systems, far from any law, far from any justice. The wealthy came here to spend their credits on things they could not buy anywhere else. Entertainment, pleasure, and sometimes things far worse. Daniel Carter had been playing his guitar in places like this for almost 5 years now. He was 34 years old, with tired eyes and hands that knew every string by memory. He did not ask questions about the stations he visited. He played his songs, collected his payment, and moved on to the next place. That was the deal he had made with himself after losing everything. His wife and daughter had died when the colony on Hestia 7 was destroyed. A reactor failure, they had called it. 3,000 people gone in a single night. Daniel had been off-world, performing at a trade hub when he received the news. He never went back to Earth after that. There was nothing left for him there. So he drifted. From station to station, planet to planet, playing old Earth songs for aliens who found human music curious and exotic. It was not much of a life, but it kept him moving. And as long as he was moving, he did not have to think. Tonight, he was performing at a lounge called the Silver Veil. It was an upscale place, filled with aliens draped in expensive fabrics and jewelry that glittered under soft lights. Daniel sat on a small stage in the corner, his fingers moving gently across the strings as he played a slow melody. The aliens talked among themselves, barely paying attention to him. That was fine. He preferred it that way. But halfway through his second set, something changed. There was a commotion in the adjoining hall. Daniel could hear voices rising, a mix of excitement and cool laughter. He glanced toward the archway that connected the lounge to the next room and saw a crowd gathering. Wealthy patrons were leaving their seats to get a better look at something. Daniel tried to focus on his music, but the noise kept pulling at his attention. When he finished the song, he set his guitar down and walked toward the archway. He told himself he was just curious. He told himself it was none of his business. But then he saw her in the center of the hall. Surrounded by a ring of spectators, there was a transparent cage. And inside that cage was a child. She was not human. Daniel could see that immediately. Her skin had a faint glow to it, pale blue like moonlight on water, though the light was dim and flickering. Her eyes were large and dark, and her thin arms were wrapped around her knees as she sat in the corner of the cage. She could not have been more than 12 years old. If human ages meant anything for her species, Daniel had seen her kind before. The Valari. They were a peaceful species known throughout the galaxy for their empathic abilities. They could sense emotions and, in some cases, project their own feelings into the minds of others. It made them gentle and compassionate, but it also made them vulnerable. The crowd around the cage was laughing because the girl was crying. Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest as he watched. A tall alien in merchant robes was explaining to the others that this particular Valari was called the Broken One. Her empathic abilities had been damaged during her capture. He said, but she could still project basic emotions: fear, pain, sadness. The patrons found it amusing to watch her suffer, to feel her distress wash over them like a strange kind of thrill. Daniel's hands curled into fists at his sides. He had seen cruelty before. The galaxy was full of it. He had learned to look away, to keep walking, to remind himself that one human could not change anything. But this was different. This was a child, a frightened, broken child being treated like a toy for the entertainment of monsters. He stepped closer to the cage, pushing through the crowd until he was at the front. The girl looked up at him, her dark eyes meeting his. For a moment, everything else faded away. The noise, the laughter, the aliens pressing around him. There was only her, and then he felt it. A tiny pulse of emotion brushed against his mind. It was faint, barely there, like the last flicker of a candle before it goes out. But he recognized it immediately. Hope, this broken child, who had been caged and tormented for who knew how long, had looked at him and felt hope. Daniel did not move. He could not. His throat was tight and his eyes were burning, and all he could think about was his daughter. She had been the same age when she died. She had the same way of looking at him, like he could fix anything, like he could make the world safe. He had failed her. He had not been there when the colony fell. He had not been able to save her, but he was here now. A hand touched his shoulder, and Daniel flinched. He turned to see a server, a small reptilian alien, watching him with cautious eyes. "You should not stare too long," the server whispered. "The handlers do not like it." Daniel forced himself to breathe. "Who owns her?" The server hesitated, then leaned closer. "The Keth Syndicate. She was taken from a refugee ship 2 years ago. They call her 12. That is her number now. She has no name. 2 years. This child had been a prisoner for 2 years. Daniel looked back at the cage. The girl, 12, was still watching him. Her glow flickered weakly, but her eyes held steady on his face. "Is there any way to buy her freedom?" Daniel asked quietly. The server shook his head. "She is not for sale. She is too valuable." "Oh." The Keth make more credits from her displays than any buyer could offer. He paused, then added, "In 3 days, she will be sold to a private collector anyway. A warlord who likes damaged things." Daniel felt sick. He stepped back from the cage, his mind racing. The server drifted away, and the crowd began to thin as patrons returned to their drinks and conversations. But Daniel stayed where he was, watching as 2 large Keth guards approached the cage. They opened a panel and dragged the girl out. She did not struggle. She did not make a sound. She simply went limp in their grip, like she had given up on fighting long ago. But as they pulled her toward a doorway that led to the lower levels, she turned her head and looked at Daniel. One last time. That tiny flicker of hope was still there. Daniel stood in the empty hall long after she was gone. His guitar was waiting for him back in the lounge. His payment was waiting. His ship was docked and ready to take him to the next station. But he could not move. He kept seeing her face. He kept feeling that fragile pulse of hope pressing against his mind. He thought about his daughter. He thought about all the years he had spent running, playing music for strangers, pretending that none of it mattered. And for the first time in 5 years, Daniel Carter made a decision that terrified him. He was not going to walk away. Daniel did not sleep that night. He lay in his small cabin aboard his ship, staring at the ceiling, running through every possibility in his mind. The smart thing would be to leave. The Gilded Ring was controlled by the Keth Syndicate, one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the outer systems. They trafficked in weapons, drugs, and living beings. They had killed people for less than what Daniel was thinking about doing. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the girl, 12, her dim glow, her tired eyes. That faint whisper of hope she had sent into his mind. By morning, he had made up his mind. He was going to find out everything he could. The station's lower lounges were quieter during the day cycle. Daniel found a small bar tucked away near the cargo docks and ordered a drink he had no intention of finishing. The bartender was a tall, thin alien with 6 arms and skin the color of rust. His name was Zix, and he had been working on the station for nearly a decade. Daniel had learned long ago that bartenders knew everything. They heard every conversation, saw every deal, and remembered every face. If anyone could tell him about the Valari girl, it was someone like Zix. "You were at the Silver Veil last night," Zix said, his multiple hands cleaning glasses with practiced ease. "I saw you watching the display." Daniel nodded slowly. "The girl, 12, how long has she been here?" Zix set down a glass and studied Daniel with cautious eyes. "Long enough. The Keth brought her in about 2 years ago. She was part of a group taken from a Valari refugee ship. There were others with her. Others? Daniel leaned forward. There are more children? Zix hesitated, glancing around the bar to make sure no one was listening. Then he lowered his voice. 7 total. All of them young. The Valari children are valuable because their empathic abilities are stronger than adults. The Keth use them for what they call emotional entertainment. Wealthy patrons pay to feel what the children feel. Daniel's stomach turned. That is sick. That is business, Zix replied flatly. At least, that is how the Keth see it. The children are kept in the lower levels. Heavy security. Neural restraints to prevent them from running or using their abilities to call for help. Daniel sat back, his mind spinning. 7 children. Not just one. All of them trapped in this nightmare. You said the girl is being sold in 3 days, Daniel said. What happens to the others? Zix shrugged. They will be sold eventually. Or they will break completely and become useless. When that happens, the Keth dispose of them. The words hit Daniel like a punch to the chest. Dispose of them. Like they were broken equipment. Like they were nothing. He pushed away from the bar, leaving credits on the counter. Thank you for the information. Zix watched him go, then called out, Human, whatever you are thinking, do not do it. The Keth will kill you. They will not even hesitate. Daniel paused at the door. Maybe, but I have to try. He spent the next several hours wandering the station, thinking. He had no weapons, no combat training, and no connections. He was just a musician with a guitar and a broken heart. How was he supposed to rescue 7 children from a criminal empire? The answer came from an unexpected place. He was sitting in a cargo bay, watching ships come and go, when a woman approached him. She was human, maybe in her early 40s, with short dark hair and a scar running along her jaw. She wore the practical clothing of a freighter pilot, and she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen trouble before. You are Daniel Carter, she said. It was not a question. Daniel looked up at her. Do I know you? No, but Zix told me about you. He said you were asking questions about the Valari children. She sat down across from him, her eyes sharp and careful. My name is Lisa Vance. I run a cargo ship out of this station. And I have been waiting for someone stupid enough to try what you are thinking. Daniel frowned. Stupid? Lisa smiled, but there was no humor in it. Brave and stupid often look the same. I have helped smuggle escaped prisoners before. Small jobs. Quick runs. But those children, she shook her head. The security around them is too heavy. I could not do it alone. But with help? Daniel asked. Lisa studied him for a long moment. Maybe, if you are serious. If you are willing to risk everything. Daniel did not hesitate. I am. I will give you everything I have. My ship, my savings, all of it. Just help me get them out. Lisa held up a hand. I do not want your money. I want your commitment. Because here's the thing, Daniel. If we do this, we cannot save just one. If we move against the Keth and only take the girl, they will kill the others as punishment. It has happened before. Daniel felt the weight of her words settle over him. 7 children. 7, not 1. All of them or none of them. Then, we save all of them, he said quietly. Lisa nodded, something like respect flickering in her eyes. Good answer. But you need to understand what we are up against. The lower levels are guarded around the clock. The children are fitted with neural restraints that shock them if they try to run. The only way in is through the entertainment halls, and even then, you would need a reason to be there. Daniel thought for a moment. Then an idea began to form. I am a musician, he said slowly. I have been performing at the Silver Veil. What if I could get access to the private entertainment hall? The one where they display the children? Lisa raised an eyebrow. How would you manage that? I would offer something special. A performance that would make the displays more valuable. Human music seems to have an effect on Valari emotions. If I can convince the Keth that my songs will enhance the experience, they might let me in. Lisa was silent for a long time, thinking it over. Then she leaned back and crossed her arms. It might work, but you would need more than just access. You would need a team. Someone to disable their communications so they cannot call for backup. Someone to prepare the children for extraction. And someone to fly them out before the Keth realize what happened. Do you have people who can help? Daniel asked. Lisa nodded slowly. I have a few contacts. A co-pilot named Greg, who's good with technical systems. And there's a Valari woman named Soray, who's been searching for these children for months. She lost her own daughter to the Keth years ago. She would do anything to save them. Daniel felt a spark of hope, real hope, for the first time since this began. Then we have a chance, he said. Lisa stood up and offered him her hand. We have a small chance. A very small chance. But sometimes that is all you need. Daniel took her hand and shook it firmly. He had no idea if they would survive this. He had no idea if he would ever play another song or see another sunrise. But for the first time in 5 years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered, and that was worth everything. The next 2 days passed in a blur of planning and quiet fear. Daniel met the rest of the team in a hidden storage room deep in the station's cargo district. It was a cramped space filled with old crates and forgotten equipment, but it was safe from the eyes and ears of the Keth. Lisa's co-pilot, Greg Harmon, was a man of few words. He was tall and thin, with gray streaking through his dark hair and the steady hands of someone who had worked with machines his whole life. He listened more than he spoke, but when he did speak, every word mattered. Lisa trusted him completely, and that was enough for Daniel. The other member of the team was Soray. She was a Valari woman, older than the children they were trying to save, with skin that glowed a soft silver in the dim light. Her eyes held a sadness that Daniel recognized, the kind that came from losing someone you loved and never fully recovering. My daughter was taken 6 years ago, Soray explained when they first met. She did not survive, but I have spent every year since then trying to find other children before it is too late for them. When I learned there were 7 Valari young ones on this station, I came here immediately. I have been watching, waiting for an opportunity. Daniel understood. He saw himself in her pain. They had both lost children. They had both been searching for a way to make it mean something. Lisa spread a rough map of the station across an old crate. Here is the plan. Daniel, you are our way in. Tomorrow night, you will perform in the private entertainment hall where the children are displayed. You need to convince Vrax, the Keth lieutenant who runs that section, that your music will make the displays more valuable. Daniel nodded. I already spoke to him this morning. He was interested. Human music is exotic to most aliens. I told him that our songs can amplify Valari emotions, make their projections more intense. He agreed to a trial performance. Greg looked up from the map. And while you are playing, I will be in the maintenance tunnels. There is a junction point that controls the station's communication array. If I can disable it, the Keth will not be able to call for backup when things go wrong. When, not if, Lisa added with a grim smile. Things will go wrong. They always do. Soray traced her finger along the map to a cluster of small rooms near the entertainment hall. The children are kept here. 7 holding cells, each with a neural restraint panel outside the door. I will need a security key to disable the restraints and open the cells. I can get you one, Greg said. I have been watching the guards. There is a rotation shift where only 2 are on duty. If I time it right, I can lift a key during the confusion. Lisa folded her arms. My ship will be waiting at the emergency docking port on level 6. Once the children are free, you lead them through the service corridor to the port. I will have the engines running. We jump to hyperspace the moment everyone is aboard. It sounded simple when she said it, but Daniel knew that nothing about this would be simple. There were too many things that could go wrong. Too many guards. Too many locked doors. And if even one part of the plan failed, they would all die. But they had no choice. The girl, 12, was scheduled to be sold the morning after the performance. If they did not act tomorrow night, she would be gone forever. That evening, Daniel returned to his ship alone. He sat in the small cabin where he had spent so many lonely nights and picked up his guitar. His fingers moved across the strings, playing a melody he had not played in years. It was a lullaby. His wife used to sing it to their daughter when she was small. He had written the guitar arrangement himself, adding soft notes that made the song feel like a warm blanket on a cold night. He had not played it since the day he learned they were gone. But now, sitting in the silence of his cabin, he let the music come. He let himself remember his daughter's face, her laughter, the way she used to curl up in his lap and ask him to play just one more song before bed. Tears slipped down his cheeks. But he did not stop playing. Tomorrow, he would walk into danger. Tomorrow, he would risk everything for children he had never met. But tonight, he allowed himself to grieve, to feel the weight of everything he had lost and everything he still hoped to save. When the song ended, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he set down his guitar and whispered into the empty room, "I could not save you, but maybe I can save them." He did not sleep that night. Instead, he spent the hours practicing, making sure every note was perfect. When the station's artificial lights shifted to indicate morning, he was still sitting in the same place, his guitar in his lap, his heart pounding in his chest. Lisa contacted him through a secure channel. "We are in position. Greg is ready. Saray is ready. It all depends on you now, Daniel." He took a deep breath. "I will not let you down." "I know you will not," she replied. "That is why I trusted you." Daniel dressed carefully. He chose simple clothes, nothing that would draw attention. He cleaned his guitar until it shone, tuning each string with practiced precision. Then he walked out of his ship and made his way toward the Silver Veil. The station was busy, as always. Aliens of every species moved through the corridors, laughing, talking, making deals. None of them knew what was about to happen. None of them cared. When Daniel reached the entrance to the private entertainment hall, Vrax was waiting for him. The Keth lieutenant was tall and broad, with dark scales and eyes that gleamed like polished stone. He looked Daniel up and down with obvious amusement. "The human musician," Vrax said, his voice low and rough. "I hope your performance is worth my time." Daniel forced a smile. "It will be. I promise." Vrax stepped aside and gestured for Daniel to enter. "Then show me what your species can do." Daniel walked through the doorway, his guitar case in hand. The hall beyond was large and dim, lit by soft glowing panels along the walls. Wealthy patrons were already gathering, drinks in hand, their attention fixed on the 7 transparent enclosures arranged in a circle around the room. And in those enclosures, Daniel saw them. 7 children. 7 Velari young ones with dim, flickering glows and eyes that had seen too much. They sat or stood in their cages, silent and still, waiting for the entertainment to begin. Daniel's gaze found 12 immediately. She was in the enclosure closest to the stage. Her eyes met his, and he felt that familiar pulse of hope brush against his mind. He walked to the center of the room, opened his case, and lifted his guitar. This was it. The performance of a lifetime. And everything depended on what happened next. Daniel began to play. He started with something soft and slow, a melody that drifted through the hall like smoke. The patrons barely noticed at first. They were too busy drinking and chatting, waiting for the real entertainment to begin. But the children noticed Dot from the moment the first notes left his guitar. Daniel saw something change in them. Their dim glows flickered, then steadied. Their tired eyes lifted toward him, drawn by the music like flowers turning toward the sun. And then their emotions began to project. It started as a gentle wave, washing over the room. The patrons fell silent, their conversations dying away as they felt something unexpected. Not pain, not fear. Something warmer. Something almost like comfort. Daniel kept playing. He watched the children's faces as their glows grew brighter, pulsing in time with the music. He saw 12 in her enclosure, her small hands pressed against the transparent wall, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his chest ache. The patrons began to murmur among themselves. This was not what they had expected. This was not the sharp thrill of fear or the bitter edge of suffering. This was something different, something they did not know how to process. Vrax watched from the side of the room, his dark eyes narrowing. Daniel could feel the Keth's suspicion growing, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Not yet. In the corner of his vision, he saw Saray slip into the hall. She was dressed as a server, carrying a tray of drinks, moving between the patrons with practiced ease. No one paid attention to her. All eyes were on Daniel and the glowing children. Saray moved toward the first enclosure, where a young Velari boy sat watching the performance. She set down her tray and knelt, pretending to adjust something on the floor. Daniel saw her fingers move across the control panel, and a moment later, the boy's neural restraint deactivated with a soft click. 1 down. 6 to go. Daniel shifted to a different song, something with more movement, more rhythm. The children's projections intensified, filling the room with waves of emotion. Some of the patrons looked uncomfortable now, overwhelmed by feelings they did not understand. Saray moved to the second enclosure, then the third. Daniel kept his eyes forward, his fingers never faltering. But his heart was pounding so hard, he was sure everyone could hear it. Then everything went wrong. Vrax noticed Saray. Daniel saw it happen in slow motion. The Keth lieutenant turned his head, his gaze following the server who was spending too much time near the enclosures. His eyes narrowed. His hand moved toward the communicator on his belt. Daniel had to act. He stopped playing the soft melody and struck a harsh chord that echoed through the hall like thunder. The sudden shift caught everyone off guard. The children's projections spiked, a wave of intense emotion that crashed over the patrons like a physical blow. Several aliens stumbled, clutching their heads. Others cried out in shock. In the chaos, Vrax dropped his communicator. He turned toward Daniel, his face twisting with anger, but before he could speak, one of the patrons collapsed, overwhelmed by the emotional surge. Daniel played faster, louder, driving the emotions higher. He did not know if he was helping or hurting, but he knew he had to keep the attention on himself. He had to give Saray time. She was at the 5th enclosure now, her hands flying over the controls. The children were watching her, their eyes wide, their glows pulsing with something that looked almost like hope. Vrax shouted for his guards. 2 Keth soldiers pushed through the confused crowd, their weapons drawn. Daniel saw them coming and made a decision. He dropped his guitar and ran not away from the danger. Toward it, he threw himself at the nearest guard, slamming into the larger alien with all his weight. It was not a smart move. The guard barely stumbled, and Daniel felt a sharp pain in his shoulder as the Keth swung his weapon. But it bought Saray another few seconds. She reached the 7th enclosure. All the restraints were down. "Now," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Children, come to me. Now." The enclosures opened. 7 Velari children stumbled out, their legs weak, their bodies trembling. But they moved. They followed Soray toward the emergency exit on the far side of the hall. Daniel tried to stand, but the guard hit him again, this time across the back. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath. The pain in his shoulder was sharp and hot, and he realized he was bleeding, but the children were moving. That was all that mattered. He looked up and saw 12 standing a few feet away. She had not followed the others. She was staring at him, her small face pale, her glow flickering with fear. "Go," Daniel managed to say. "Run." But she did not move. Instead, she reached out her hand toward him, and he felt something wash over him. Warmth, strength, a tiny pulse of energy that pushed back the pain and filled him with something he had not felt in years. Courage. Daniel forced himself to his feet. The guard raised his weapon again, but Daniel was faster this time. He grabbed a fallen tray from the floor and swung it hard, catching the guard across the face. The Keth stumbled, and Daniel ran. He scooped 12 into his arms, holding her tight against his chest, and sprinted toward the emergency exit. The other children were already through, led by Soray. He could hear Vrax screaming behind him, could hear the sound of more guards approaching. But ahead, he saw Lisa's ship. The cargo vessel had crashed through the emergency docking port, its hull scraping against the station's metal frame. The rear hatch was open, and Greg was standing in the doorway, waving frantically. "Move!" Greg shouted. "We are out of time." Daniel ran harder than he had ever run in his life. 12 clung to him, her arms wrapped around his neck, her face buried against his shoulder. He could feel her heart beating fast against his chest, could feel her glow pulsing weakly with every step. Soray was at the hatch, pulling the last of the children inside. Daniel reached the ship and practically threw himself through the doorway, still holding 12 in his arms. The moment they were inside, Greg slammed the hatch shut. Lisa's voice came over the internal speakers. "Hold on, we're jumping." The ship lurched violently. Daniel felt the familiar pull of hyperspace, the strange sensation of reality bending around them. And then, suddenly, everything was quiet. They were gone. They had escaped. Daniel lay on the floor of the cargo hold, his chest heaving, his shoulder throbbing with pain. But he did not let go of 12. She was still pressed against him, her small hand clutching his shirt, her glow slowly beginning to steady. He looked down at her face and saw something that made everything worth it. She was smiling. It was small and fragile, like a flower pushing through cracked ground. But it was real. She was free. Daniel closed his eyes and let himself breathe. They had done it. Against all odds, they had done it. Daniel woke to the soft hum of the ship's engines and the gentle glow of emergency lighting. He was lying on a cot in the corner of the cargo hold, his shoulder wrapped in clean bandages. The pain was still there, but it was distant now, dulled by whatever medicine Soray had given him. He tried to sit up, and a small hand pressed against his chest, pushing him back down. 12 was sitting beside the cot, watching him with those large, dark eyes. Her glow was brighter than he had ever seen it, a soft blue that pulsed gently in the dim light. She shook her head slowly, and he understood. She wanted him to rest. "How long was I out?" he asked, his voice rough. Lisa appeared from the front of the hold, wiping her hands on a rag. "About 12 hours. You lost a lot of blood. Soray patched you up, but you need to take it easy for a while." Daniel glanced around the cargo hold. The other 6 children were huddled together near the far wall, wrapped in blankets, their glow soft and steady. They were sleeping, their faces peaceful in a way that Daniel suspected they had not been in years. "They are safe," Lisa said, following his gaze. "We jumped 3 times before settling into a quiet sector. No sign of pursuit. The Keth probably think we are long gone by now." Daniel closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. It was over. They had actually done it. Lisa sat down on a crate near the cot. I sent word to the Galactic Council through a contact I trust. Told them everything about the Keth operation. The trafficking, the children, all of it. They are dispatching enforcement ships to the Gilded Ring. Will it matter? Daniel asked. Lisa shrugged. Maybe. The council moves slowly, but the evidence is solid. Even if the Keth leadership escapes, their operation is finished. No more children will suffer in that place. Daniel nodded slowly. That was something. It was not justice. Not really. But it was something. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Saray, standing near the group of sleeping children. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held a deep emotion that Daniel could not quite name. The eldest child woke a few hours ago, Saray said. She spoke to me. She told me the girl's name. Daniel looked at 12, who was still sitting beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Her name is Alira, Saray continued. She lost the ability to speak after she was captured. The trauma was too great. But she has been trying to tell someone her name for 2 years. She would mouth the word, hoping someone would notice. No one ever did. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. He turned to the girl beside him, Alira. That was her name, not a number, not a broken thing. A child with a name and a story and a future that had almost been stolen from her. Alira, he said softly. Her glow pulsed brighter, and she smiled. It was the same fragile smile he had seen on the ship, but stronger now. More real. The days that followed were quiet. Lisa navigated them through safe sectors, avoiding major trade routes and keeping a low profile. Greg spent most of his time checking the ship's systems, making sure they stayed off the Keth's radar. Saray cared for the children, teaching them simple games and telling them stories from Valari history. And Daniel played his guitar. At first, he played softly, just for himself. But the children gathered around to listen, their glows brightening with every note. Even Alira, who had spent so long in silence and fear, sat close to him, her eyes fixed on his fingers as they moved across the strings. He played old Earth songs, lullabies, folk tunes, simple melodies that his grandmother had taught him when he was young. And as he played, he saw the children begin to heal. Their glows grew stronger. Their smiles came easier. They started to laugh, to talk, to act like the children they had always been. One evening, Lisa received a message from Saray's contacts on a distant Valari colony. They had been searching for surviving family members of the rescued children. For most of them, there was no one left. Their parents had died in the refugee ship attack. But for Alira, there was hope. Her older brother, a young man named Taryn, had escaped the attack years ago. He had been searching for her ever since, never giving up hope that she might still be alive. When he received word that she had been found, he chartered the fastest ship he could find and flew to meet them. The reunion happened on a small moon, far from any major settlements. Daniel stood with the others as a shuttle landed on the rocky surface, its engines kicking up dust. The hatch opened, and a young Valari man stepped out, his glow bright with emotion. Alira stood frozen for a moment. Then, slowly, she began to walk toward him. Her steps were hesitant at first, but they grew faster. And then she was running, her small form racing across the dusty ground. Taryn caught her in his arms and held her tight. His glow flared so brightly that Daniel had to shield his eyes. Alira's glow answered, pulsing in harmony with her brother's, brighter than the sun. She made a sound then. A small, broken sound that was almost like a word dot. It was the first sound she had made in 2 years. Daniel watched from a distance, his chest tight with emotion. He thought about his own daughter. He thought about all the things he had never gotten to say, all the moments he had missed. He could never bring her back. That wound would never fully heal. But this, watching Alira reunited with her brother, seeing her glow burn with joy, this was something precious. This was proof that even in a galaxy full of darkness, there was still light. Saray stood beside him, her own glow soft and steady. "You gave her this," she said quietly. "You gave all of them a chance to live again." Daniel shook his head. "We gave them that chance. All of us." When it was time to leave, Alira broke away from her brother and ran to Daniel. She stood in front of him, her small face tilted up, her eyes shining with an emotion he could feel, even without her projecting it. She reached out and took his hand. Her glow pulsed, and he felt a wave of warmth wash over him. Love, gratitude, a bond that words could never capture. He knelt down so he was at her level. "You are going to be okay," he said softly. "You are going to be happy. I know it." She smiled, that same fragile, beautiful smile. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, a Valari gesture of deep affection, when she finally let go and walked back to her brother. Daniel stood and watched them leave. Lisa appeared beside him. "What now?" she asked. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He looked up at the stars, millions of them scattered across the dark sky. "I do not know," he said finally, "but I think I am ready to find out." He walked back to his ship, his guitar case in hand. For the first time in 5 years, he did not feel empty. He had scars that would never fade. He had losses that would never stop hurting. But he also had something new. He had hope, and that was enough.